Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You, Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you're making a deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
Who the hell voted for me?
Chicken.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk glamour to you. You understand that better?
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor, bringing you all the latest interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host, Ben Waterworth.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Survivor Oz, Australia's #1 TV and film podcast, as we enter another season of episode recaps, the 31st season of Survivor. Wow, who would have ever thought we would have been at this point? And it's a very big season, the third entire All-Stars entitled Cambodia Second Chance. We've had a fantastic premiere episode, 90 minutes worth of stuff that we've just witnessed and ready to talk about, and what better way to kick things off than with one of our favourite guests on this show, one of the greatest players to ever play the game of Survivor. He is the winner of the 5th season of Survivor Thailand. Welcome back to Survivor Oz, the one, the only, Mr. Brian Heidik. Brian, welcome back to Survivor Oz.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
So exciting to have you here back, mate. So exciting for another season of Survivor. And it's sad, second chances. You know, you're not out there. You weren't eligible, but we're still disappointed not to see you out there again.
It's good stuff. Good things come to those who wait.
We've been waiting a little bit. So are some of these people. So I guess seeing some of these people waiting all these years, and your second chance still possibly out there. Who knows?
Absolutely, but it's interesting about the what happened tonight.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, just starting, I guess, right at the beginning of this season and the episode. I mean, do you like this idea of a second chance season coming into this with full All-Stars again, returning players, and giving some of these people that really have been crying out for a second chance another crack at the game?
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't bother me. It's entertaining. It's intriguing. Obviously, there's a lot of gracious and thankful people on there. And passionate people about the game. So that was kind of nice to see. Just listening to them talking about being back on Survivor, and of course giving thanks. So it was kind of nice that they were giving the accolades back to being there, and they really, I think, appreciated their time out there.
Did you like the choices, I guess, that people voted for? Were there particular people coming into this season that you would have liked to see over some of the ones that we've got at the moment?
Hindsight, you can never judge things. What's done is done. So I don't really like to think back of this person could have been better or that person. What's done is done, and it was actually up to the fans that actually voted people on this season. So that's how the cards fell. That's how the cookie crumbles, and let's watch how the season progresses.
Well, we've got a few old school players, as we got a lot throughout this episode, and sort of people really from your era of playing the game. I mean, you obviously got the likes of Jeff Varner, Kimmy, Kelly Wigglesworth. I mean, did you have many interactions with these guys sort of back in those early days of Survivor, when a lot of these early charity events and sort of events were happening back around when you played the game?
Sure, yeah. When I lived in Los Angeles, I met a few of them, and just in passing and hellos, and I didn't get to really know anybody as I have done recently in this last year, with just reaching back out and touching base with everyone. But from what I can remember, everybody was pretty sincere and just good folk. As they say. Yeah, well, it's interesting kind of seeing how they're coming in and trying to play things differently. We saw a fair bit of Kelly Wigglesworth early on talking about coming in differently, and then, of course, with Jeff Varner towards the end. And, I mean, how do you think they were adapting it? Do you see particularly those two really being able to adapt it after 15-odd years of playing this game and being able to go far and deep? Well, my first observation was to slow down. Just kind of get to know everybody, get to kind of warm up. Everyone was a little too quick to start playing the game, whereas they didn't get to really know people as much as they could. So before they started playing the game. So that was kind of my first observation was just slow down. Take it easy. We'll see how that progresses, but also some of the results would happen with regards to how it was voted, how the votes were cast. If you notice, there was a lot of friction in the tribe with just the little antics that were being done with some yoga and some other personal habits on the first day or the first 2 days they were out there. These personal habits already affected or rub people the wrong way or rub people the right way. So that was kind of interesting to see that a couple of personal decisions or some choices that were made over some certain habits kind of affected or kind of set the boat in motion for the targets.
And that's really key, isn't it, in this early part of the game, particularly when, as you said, some people are coming out really quickly trying to form things, but a lot of it can come down to just these little traits, whether people aren't into yoga or, people going around being crazy about trying to find their bag. I mean, it's just little things that can irk people the wrong way, which then enables them to become a target should the tribe lose.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, it was quite obvious with some of the reactions to some of the people just in the cameras and watching their, those that were doing stuff and those that weren't doing anything, that it already offended some people.
Are you much into yoga, Brian? I don't know if you've ever really...
It's actually fantastic. It's a fantastic form it's a different form of workout. Yes, I have done yoga a few times, and it's not easy. It is relaxing. It's peaceful. But it's something that probably needs to be done in a different type of environment. Right.
So it's something that maybe don't try on Survivor too much then?
Right. That's my thought, especially the first day.
Yes. I think I tried yoga once, and, it wasn't for me. So
it's tough.
Yeah, if you take a look at my physical abilities, Brian, and, it's way too tough for me. So I'm happy to just talk behind a microphone rather than doing the downward dog.
Not a problem. I hear you.
Yes. But the start, we have this fantastic kind of real throwback to early seasons when they're on the boat and they're fighting for items and there's all this sort of commotion going on, and we get this great twist then of having to swim out to an extra boat and grab the rice. What's your take on this? This again, throwing back to kind of the days when you were playing Survivor.
Right. What a great way to start the show. It's exciting. It's nail biting. You're kind of sitting on the edge of your seat. It was fun to watch. It was very involving as well. But it was seeing them scramble and getting right into it. Everybody kind of nobody was really thrown off kilter too quickly, and they kind of just adapted. I was impressed actually with how quickly everybody kind of just got into the game. And that was kind of exciting to watch. So I loved watching the intensity and of course the way that they all actually were able to get their supplies, and of course the way that the tribes were divided. So I thought it was a great way that how the show started. I really did.
And it's interesting when we have those bits where they've got to go somewhere separate, and we saw that with Kelly sort of jumping in there straight away and swimming ahead. And she was called out very early with Jeff's throwback to the first season. Everyone's giving her a round of applause, and at the end there when she sort of struggled in the challenge, and again Jeff calling her out. Do you feel you could be in trouble, Kelly? As somebody who hasn't played this game in so long, and we saw her, as you said, kind of developing the tribe early with the building and the shelter building, is that the way you see someone like her to have to keep playing that game? Because 15 years is a long time between playing the game. A lot has changed, whether she thinks it has or not. So is it you feel she's really just observing a lot at this point of the game and just has to stay out of trouble to try and make it long into this game?
Well, it all depends on how much her some of her faults or some of the even just what happened tonight, how this is going to affect her way of playing or how it's going to affect her mentally. She's already showed some weakness with crying and sort of being a little bit emotional about losing, and you have to have a winner and a loser, and she didn't help with that challenge. So we'll see if that affects her over the next week or two. That's going to be very important for her to stay or move forward with the game, because if she's any sort of Debbie Downer type of personality, she probably won't last very long. So that's my first initial thought on her is that she's got to pick her chin up. What happened, brush off the sand, and move forward, and help out with the rest of the challenges. Because I think being now she's in motherhood and she's matured as a woman, she should be very very effective as a player if she doesn't let the what happened in the past, and even when she played 15 years ago, that struggle that she's had with always maybe losing a challenge or making the wrong decision, that could hurt her if she becomes depressed.
Did you have many Debbie Downers to deal with in those early days out there in Thailand, Brian?
We had one or two that would kind of rub a few of us the wrong way, and that was a pretty easy decision to who would go next. When it kind of reminded me of this blonde girl, Allie.
Mm-hmm.
Abby on that tribe, that she's kind of very likes to speak before she thinks type of personality.
Yep.
So she's going to have an issue.
She is interesting because she was very volatile and fiery on Philippines, and she's clearly trying to be a little bit different, but we have this situation with her bag, and
she's on borrowed time, mark my words.
Well, it was kind of at the end of it, based on how the edit went, at least, I think it kind of seemed she was going to be first boot, and it was a little bit of a surprise that Vitas goes. But if you're in that position, Vitas or Abby, I'm guessing you would have then gone after to Abby.
Right, but I would have personally done Abby. It's what you didn't see is behind the scenes how much Vitas really rubbed people the wrong way with doing the yoga right in their face. Mm-hmm. I think he should have walked off down to the beach, maybe done something similar to what Joe did, just get out of everybody's way, and if you want to follow, hang out. But he should have probably had a little bit more space in between him and his moves, yoga moves. That is.
Well, it turned.
But I think it. And again, it pissed off a few more people than I could tell, but obviously it rubbed 6 of them the wrong way.
Yeah, definitely. I like the fact that they bring in the hashtag Joga to try and point out that he's going that. So I mean, it was a very yoga-filled episode, I felt.
It was, and that's a great tag for Joe. It's so fitting after you meet him. It's such a fitting thing for him too. It's perfect.
Now, you wouldn't meet him, as you said to me off air, that at Hearts of Reality. So you formed a bit of a friendship with our Joga man.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Very again, one of those sincere type of guys, and just wants to play the game. And I think he'll do very well on here. And obviously, he's a good strong person to have on your tribe, and you want to keep him as long as you can. He's just he's going to do some damage this season. That's my feeling. He'll do some damage. So he'll go very long.
So very deep. Okay, it's interesting kind of how with the game though, because sometimes you see people like a Joe start off strong, but then they become a target. Obviously, as we move into the middle portions of the game. But do you think he's learnt from maybe some mistakes he made last season to be able to go over the top of any of those targets coming his way?
Yeah, sure. He's learned. I think he has learned, but he's also likable. Mm-hmm. The problem with him is he's likable, and he's likable by many, and that's why he'll go a long way, because he's not only is he likable, but he also knows how to kind of deal with everybody as well on their own level. So I think he learned, even though he didn't have much time to rest in between the seasons. I think he learned a lot just by studying the game, but also in his last game, how to play and how not to play.
And let's not forget that the ladies love him. So, I mean, we heard that, didn't we, from Savage, talking about his daughters.
But even the guys. I mean, the guys like him too, I think.
Yeah.
The father was talking about his daughters, so he's a very, very likable guy on both sides, which is very powerful in the game of Survivor. And he's also somebody that you need on your teams, because he could definitely help move you or anybody else that's playing alongside him if you form a friendship down the road.
And we saw with the Bayon tribe, obviously with that likability factor with Joe, and we saw a lot then from Jeremy, who straight away, like it was in San Juan del Sur, quick to start talking to people. He was smoothing things over with Keith and basically, making sure that little fires from any animosity from their season was all smoothed over. And he's then trying to get Tasha, and he's talking about Joe. So what's your take on someone like Jeremy, who had a very strong game, San Juan del Sur, was blindsided middle of the game? I mean, is he somebody who you think can also go far second time around?
One of those, exactly what I was kind of resorting to earlier, slow down. He needs to really get to know people over again. He's got to really do a little bit more analyzing as opposed to strategizing, especially in the beginning, and forming the sort of friendships and the real sort of relationships that you can develop there quickly. But he needs to just slow down with how he wants to kind of he's being very A-personality-ish, and that will rub somebody the wrong way sooner than later, in my opinion.
Do you feel somebody like Steven could be that person? Because, I mean, Steven got a pretty poor edit this episode. It was all about him bumbling around and struggling with the survival aspect and being on the outs. But we saw his season that he was very quick to be able to get somebody on his side and go right to the end once he was able to work his way in. And he's a very intelligent man, Steven. So he could be somebody to really upset that apple cart, despite his bumbling full edit in the first episode.
Right. And again, it could be purposeful. It could be part of his strategy. You know, he even called himself the nerd, but he is non-threatening. He's non-threatening. He'll be overlooked. He'll be kind of riding coattails until he's either needed or he's needed to be discarded. So it will be kind of a neat sort of way of his play to watch to see if it will work for him or against him. But I think you're right. I think he is a smart guy, and he'll form an alliance. It's just a matter of if he can kind of fly under the radar through the challenges and maintain his sort of low-keyedness, as they say.
Well, it's interesting with the whole Bayon tribe and sort of the physical members that they've got, and then we look at Takeo and kind of the people that they've got there. They've got, we've talked about Abby, PG there, obviously, can get a little bit OTT sometimes from what we saw. Shirin had a very quiet episode based on how things happened last season. So an interesting mix of personalities on that tribe, I feel. And we saw sort of with a look ahead to next week, Jeff Varner starting to maybe get a little bit heated as well. Do you feel that tribe has the real ability to kind of self-destruct, not only given that they lost the first challenge, but with the very diverse mixture of personalities that they have together?
Yeah, they're either going to disintegrate very quickly, or they're going to form a sort of a glue-like alliance that could work for them. Yes, and the challenges, they seem to work pretty well with the challenges. It's just the one, Kelly Wigglesworth, just had the problem with building the stick long enough and obviously getting the key off. I think if they would have done that, won that challenge, it would have been a lot, their morale would have been a lot better than obviously being the first team to tribal council. But yeah, it will be interesting to see them. They could be that tribe that literally self-destructs, and the other tribe could completely dominate the game with the players that they've got on their team. So that's what it's going to kind of be fun to watch over the next few weeks, is to see exactly how the tribes do either coexist or if they can't exist at all.
We'll talk about the whole idol find by Kelly in a minute, but in terms of people searching for the idols, obviously Kelly found the clue, which then told her where the idol would be. But, I mean, hypothetically, Brian, you come out and you play Season 32, Season 33. There weren't idols on your season. You see people coming out really early searching for idols, which is going to raise suspicion because they're away from camp, and we've seen that in previous seasons before. How would you play that situation? How do you think is the best way that you want to find an idol, but you obviously don't want to be too obvious about trying to search for one?
Well, that's where you really need to have that sort of relationship with your tribe members to know exactly what their kind of thinking or their thought process is. Because ultimately, if you have the strong relationships and the strong sort of bonds of moving forward in the game and you're winning the challenges, the immunity idol doesn't become that important. It only becomes important if you become one of those characters or one of those players that is not liked, you're not useful, you're constantly just barely getting by challenges, or you've flown under the radar. that's really the time that you're going to need to worry about the immunity idol. I always thought about that too. If I had immunity idol on my season, and again, I don't know if what would have happened if we would have had one. But if you know, or if you have the relationships with people, the friendships that you can ultimately form, it's not as important as they make it look like on television. So the immunity idol is more of a secondary object. It obviously has come into play with some people in the past, but it's not as important, I think, as they make it, unless you're one of those types that sort of squeaks by.
Yeah.
That's when the immunity idol is important. But the way that she went about looking at it, again, the first day, slow down. We need to relax. Exactly. I think that will eventually hurt her if they find out she has that.
Well, it's an interesting twist to have it in a challenge, and the whole aspect of, do you make it really obvious by trying to find it? And we saw her kind of go over where it was, and she was sort of kicking herself that she didn't find it before sneaking around and grabbing it. I mean, my take on that is that it would be the perfect opportunity to do it in that first challenge, because at this point, nobody out there, unless you're Kelly, knows that there's going to be an idol. I mean, I'm sure that's crossed nobody's mind because it's never happened before. So she's found it in the most perfect opportunity, because once word gets out there that this is where they are, in a couple of episodes' time, then people are always going to be watching people whether they're going to get the idol. So do you feel that her risk to turn around there and grab it, she obviously found it, nobody caught her, it paid off, but is that a risk that was too much, or do you think that she did do the right thing?
I actually think she did the right thing. I thought it was great, actually, how she waited. She waited for the right moment. She waited for the intensity regarding the two tribes, because if you notice, she did look a few times of when she should go get it. So I think her timing was impeccable. It was a good move on her part to do it when she did it, and I think she'll eventually play it when she needs to play it. She obviously knew, and if you saw that the way the voting was going, there were some conversations going on regarding who should go. It just wasn't exposed on television, so that was kind of interesting to me how the way the votes actually went. Most people were on board, just one more vote to get off the guy over the girl. So they did kind of have some sense of conversations, or all of them did have some sort of way of knowing that this is how the votes were going to go down. Maybe one or two of the guys, I think, were more stunned than the girls. So her having that idol, I think, is a good thing. It's just a matter of when she's going to eventually play it. So that was the time to do it, and I think it worked well for her.
It's fascinating how that vote turned out, because we didn't really see a whole lot of discussion on Vetus. And I think you're right that there's clearly more that was talked about that we didn't see, because looking at who voted for who, so the Abby votes came from Wigglesworth, Terry, Wu, and Vetus, and Wu looked completely shocked. We're used to seeing Wu shocked after the last season, I feel, but it's just interesting to see how that turned about, because again, based on the edit, and clearly we shouldn't always read into the edit, we know that, but to kind of see that turn around for Vetus, it was an interesting way it was all portrayed, I feel.
Yeah, and again, the minute they were showing the yoga and some of the other reactions to people in his tribe, I kind of thought that, wow, this is interesting how he's almost rubbing people the wrong way. Clearly, the first day, and sort of being in people's private space more than he should, and that's kind of a no-no. And you want to judge people's character, but that's again his decision, and that was a personality trait that he felt comfortable with, but it didn't come across as comfortable to others. Hence the reason he got voted off.
It's fascinating with Vetus, because I remember during his first season, I think I picked him to win that season, and he went out about halfway through, and he's always somebody that people talk up as, lots of potential. He's a good player of the game, but he just sadly in his 2 times hasn't been able to really turn it around. I mean, is he somebody that you could see come back for a 3rd time and win this game, or is he just, again, based on what you were saying, somebody who needs to slow down a little bit maybe and just not get in people's faces as much as he does?
Yeah, slow down probably. I don't think he'd be a candidate to come back. I think his personality traits just rub people the wrong way, and He needs to. I know he. This is one of the one things he didn't want to do was to be voted off first, but I think he created that. Had he had stayed just a little more low keyed and less in your face in the first day, I think he could have lasted a little bit longer. And if he would have adapted, because I think he's a smart guy.
Yeah, and it's so like what he said that he didn't want to be that person voted off if he made it back, because there are 12 people watching this season right now who didn't get voted back on, who I probably think gladly would have been the first boot, maybe, I don't know, to have that chance at least. But yeah, it must be a pretty shit feeling, Brian, to get voted back on the show only to be the first boot.
Yeah, but that's part of the risk. I mean, the reward is always greater than the risk, and that's part of the risk when it comes to Survivor.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true.
There's always that risk of being booted off first.
And, of course, we had that in your season with John, which I know we've talked about before on the show. And is John, I don't know if I've asked you this, Brian, have you ever caught up with John over the years? We haven't really had much luck in getting a hold of John. He'd be an interesting person to hear from, I think.
Yeah. When we were at Hearts of Reality, and Tanya and I were, I think we texted him one time and said hello, and he actually responded back. He's, I believe, in somewhere in the South, still at a church. So he is available. Ultimately, I'll reach out to him and try to get him on the show.
That'd be fun. I'd like that, actually. Yeah. I think we had a bit of communication with him, I think, a couple of years ago, and then it kind of all fell through. But it'd be interesting to hear from him after all these years. So yeah, absolutely. Any strings you can pull, Brian, we'd be much obliged to that, I feel.
Ask, ye shall receive.
Good. I like that. That's the way I should look at life, which I will probably a little bit more now. The challenge, just want to talk about that. I mean, it's great to see these, again, bringing back the old school, the very first challenge, Quest for Fire, with a little bit of a twist. We had the addition of tying sticks together. Quest for Fire, going back to the old days, Brian, are you a fan of that challenge?
Quest for Fire, yeah, I love it, and anything with fire, it's exciting. It's dangerous. I was a little surprised that Keith bobbed his, being that he's a pretty mechanically sort of guy, that he actually let his torch go in the water. But things happen when you're out there. The nerves are high, and it's tough being in that water. And then moving from fire over to that other challenge, I had a challenge very similar in my season, where those sticks it just took me back to my season where I had to do something very similar, and I kind of would have done quite well at that, and was hoping that Kelly would have figured out that she has to build the sticks longer, and there is a certain way that you've got to kind of stack the sticks. And obviously build them to give it that sort of strength with that length. Mm-hmm. So that was neat to watch Joe figure that out pretty quickly, and it was tough to watch Kelly struggle on that after personally going through that challenge, and we actually won that challenge where I had to do something very similar. So, but I love the whole fire building of the long the stick pole, and then having to get the keys and send them back to your tribe. So that was it was familiar. And it was fun to watch again.
And I can imagine it's a lot more difficult than it seems, because I'm guessing there's a real learning curve in getting those sticks lined up, as you were saying, to a certain length. And obviously, I guess even making sure those knots are tight enough, because I can imagine if you have a pretty loose knot, that's going to collapse as soon as you stick it out of the little hole there.
That's correct. And it's of course, it's always more intense when you've got people rooting you on. It's timed. You're trying to beat the other challenger, and but you can. It was what Kelly's big mistake was also too. She kind of tried to do didn't measure it by eye, and kind of measured it with trial and error, and that kind of cost her a little bit. Whereas Joe just kind of looked over a little bit, saw her length, built it a little bit longer, and I think he figured it out on impulse. But also he kind of looked at Kelly's stick to see, hey, it wasn't long enough, and I've got to try it then. From what I can remember on mine is I had a little bit of a lead on our tribe, and I tried it, I think, once. It wasn't long enough, and I figured out real quickly that I needed to go a little bit longer, and then of course build an extra 2 sticks, and then I'll have the support in there as well too. So you got to be careful that when you're doing this challenge, there's all these things going on with the time, of course, and the cheering, but it's the sort of figuring out solving the problem right there on the spot without having the other tribe learn from you. That's the tough part too, because a lot of times I've had to look over and I've figured something out and was able to do that. So I think Joe could have had that in his side as well.
You mentioned Keith obviously in the challenge. What's your take on Keith in general? You a bit of a Keith fan, Brian? Is he somebody that excites you to watch?
It doesn't excite me, but I think it'll go a long way. Smart guy, older guy. I think he's got a lot of life wisdom ahead of him. He won't be much of a challenge, but watch, he's one of those guys that'll be there in the end. Wow. Smart guy.
We'd like that. We're all Keith fans here, and he's always one for a funny confessional. We saw the Keith spit. We got a bit excited there, I feel, when we see him spitting out there, and he's talking about not wanting to be contortioned into yoga. So sadly, Brian, we didn't see Keith doing yoga.
That's okay. I think we're okay with not seeing that. Otherwise, he doesn't strike me the type that even would do well at yoga. So.
No, yes, I think that would be a different show we'd be watching there if that was there.
Yeah.
It's fascinating too, I think, with Jeff Probst, just quickly on his episode. I always like to kind of see how he goes. He seemed quite excited, Jeff. I think he's looking forward to this season because he was very energetic and really getting behind some of these second chance stories. And I mean, we're seeing the development of Jeff over the years, and Jeff, of course, different when you were on the show back to who he is now. I mean, in terms of just Jeff's hosting abilities now, do you feel he's a little bit too involved with his commentary and sort of his comments, or do you feel that kind of adds just this whole new element to Survivor 2015 in regards to when you were playing it back in 2002?
No, I thought actually he was quite on this episode. I agree with you. I think he was enjoying himself. I think he was having a lot of fun calling the challenges. I think he's finally having a lot more fun with it, taking it less seriously. That's what I think he's coming around that way. So I enjoyed watching him. I enjoyed his commentary, and I think he did a great job. It was he made things very exciting, opening up this season. So it was actually fun to watch him as well too. It wasn't anything that stood out that wasn't right. So I enjoyed him.
Yeah, and we had the twist, of course, straight after the challenge into Tribal Council, preventing, of course, people from really getting a whole lot of extra strategy talk. Do you like this idea, Brian? I mean, is it kind of something that they maybe should do often to really add to the drama? Because we've seen it before. We haven't seen something like that in a while, though. But I guess it makes it a little bit more tense for, say, like someone like Wigglesworth going into that, thinking, shit, I've just stuffed up the challenge. I'm really in trouble tonight.
Absolutely. I thought it was great. The timing was great. The way that they did it right away. Now, the timeline, it's not literally right away. Mm-hmm. You have a little bit of time. You actually have enough time to go get your stuff and put your clothes on, and literally while that's happening, you're talking amongst each other. What do you think? Which one? What are we doing? There's a few that will automatically have the conversations of who's going, who's not going. And granted, there was not a lot of time, but there was obviously discussions regarding who should go and who shouldn't go. And there was the ones that were talking, obviously, had developed some sense of a relationship or some sense of a strategy going into Tribal Council, even though it was immediate. So I still enjoyed the fact that it was that quick, and the impulsiveness that it made was great. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and the emotions, I think, were obviously a lot higher. I mean, we saw it from Abby. She was getting really worked up and talking down to sort of Woo when he was trying to bring things up. But I also loved the reactions of Kelly Wigglesworth when, obviously, besides the crying, but when we actually saw her at Tribal Council, she looked so nervous, like it'd been all these years, and she was going into it so worried. So I feel like somebody maybe needed to give her a hug at that point, Brian.
Well, she has a lot to be nervous. She single-handedly lost that challenge, and it was killing her. So, and of course, Jeff even made it worse by bringing it back. That same thing happened 15 years ago. So I felt really bad for her. But at the same time, I think it is nerve-wracking. I mean, you're out there. It's the first challenge. You're already at the first Tribal Council. I remember we were one of those groups. We were the first one at the Tribal Council, and it sucked. But someone has to go, and someone has to move forward. So it is a little nerve-wracking, especially being the first tribe to go to tribal council.
Well, particularly with Chewy, of course, you guys lost 3 of the first 4 challenges before, obviously, a little bit of a winning streak. But, I mean, I could imagine coming home or back to camp after Gandhi is gone, it's just kind of a case of we need to turn this around. Otherwise, in 2 or 3 more tribals, there's going to be none of us left and we're screwed.
Right. And that's the sort of that was an interesting turn with our tribe, whereas we actually, the bond we formed, the friendships that we made, and we just sort of, once we got rid of the cancer, as they say, once we trimmed the fat, we were able to now sort of have this cohesiveness and this well-oiled machine that just kept plugging away accordingly, and we just made the right decisions, and everything went into play because we all kind of generally like each other also too. So that will be a big plus in this new season to see which tribe generally gets along behind the scenes and which tribe does not. And that's why I'm going to watch very carefully to see who will and will not move forward as a tribe in this season of Survivor.
Looking at the tribes right now, who do you think would have the best chance of really forming a similar bond like Chewy did moving ahead?
I'd have to go with the Joe's team,
Mm-hmm.
Joe and Keith. I'd have to go with their tribe. My first instinct is their tribe, hands down.
There we go. We'll keep an eye on that, and should it work, we'll make sure to point it out there that, look, hey, Brian Heidik was right. It worked, and he called it in the very first episode. So, with all the props out there. Now, we do have a couple of listener questions, which I will get into, and then we've got our final set that we ask in our recaps. But, I mean, you mentioned, obviously, Joe was somebody who could go far. Keith, are there any other players that you're sort of keeping an eye on right now that you feel could go quite far into the game? Maybe a bit of an underdog story amongst any of them?
Well, I mean, I think if Kelly Wigglesworth, if she can kind of get over her what happened, I think she'll, even if there is a merge, she'll be able to adapt with the merge due to her experience with the play. So watch her if she can move forward, and if they do eventually merge and she's still there, I think she'll do well. Let's see, who else should do pretty good. I was thinking of the older gentleman as well. He'll be okay. I don't have the names offhand in front of me.
Terry or Andrew, one of those two? Or Keith?
Yeah, Andrew.
Andrew, yep.
Yeah. Andrew, I think, will do well. And then a couple of the ladies, I think I think the blonde with the immunity idol might do well too.
Kelly, yep.
Yes, so watch them.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep an eye on it. Again, we're going based on those predictions, so we'll certainly see how that plays out. And what about the opposite end of the spectrum? I mean, these are going to come into our questions soon here, Brian, when I ask you this to close it out. But are there some that you just have no hope for, that you feel in the next couple of weeks their days are numbered?
Yeah, a couple of the girls, I don't have their right in front of me. The Oriental lady.
Mm-hmm. PG.
And I think she'll go quickly. Of course, the blonde with the attitude that was almost voted off, she'll be gone quickly.
Abby.
Yep. And let's see, who else? Who do you like?
Who do I like?
Or who don't you? Who don't you like, Ben?
Who don't I like? Oh, you're really going to get me into trouble with that question. Look, my preseason first boot pick was Cass, and her tribe doesn't look in trouble at the moment. But look, I think Abby could be in trouble. I think PG, I agree with you. I think Shireen is somebody who might be in trouble if
That's.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So,
Agreed.
Yeah, there's a couple there, but it's kind of, I guess with someone like Cass, it's a bit surprising because I think a lot of people tipped her as a first boot based on her past reputations, but she was very tame this first episode. Like, we didn't see much of her, and what we did see of her, she was kind of just there and normal. So maybe Cass is going to turn things around from Chaos Cass into Sane Cass. I
think once we get into the game and the lack of food, the lack of water, lack of sleep, comes into play, you're going to see that old personality come out. Watch, mark my words.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, a lot of people are holding out for that, Brian. That's why.
Yes, I agree.
Big Cass fans. Now, speaking of fans, we've got a couple of listener questions in here for you. Thanks to people who sent these in. First one here. Peter Burek, this one just says, no questions, but I would die if you were to play again. Hopefully he's on better terms with Probst. How is the relationship with Jeff Probst, Brian? Is there animosity between you guys, or that's never sort of been a thing and it's just been talked up and you guys are fine with each other?
Well, I offered to have lunch with him at one point. Hadn't heard anything back. I know I texted Mike actually today and I said, hey, make sure you tell Probst hello. So I'm doing my part to reach out and say, hey, how you doing? So I hope that Jeff's okay. Any animosity we put beside us, we're all grown men here. Let's move on, and maybe we'll meet again out in some strange island in the middle of Timbuktu.
Hey, that could be the Survivor Timbuktu. It sounds like a legitimate season. Could work. Next one here, one of our regular listeners here, Willie LaShawn. He asks, who from Thailand do you think deserves a second chance other than yourself?
I'd have to say Tanya.
Tanya,
Tanya Vance would be a great player as a second chance.
Well, as you know, we are huge fans of Tanya. We've had her on this show plenty of times, and we, of course, had you guys all on for that little reunion a couple of seasons ago. So, yeah, look, I'm there with you. She won our Oscar for greatest second boot of all time. So, it's those sort of awards, Brian. You've won Oscars yourself. You know this. These help you out eventually coming back on the show. I mean, Spencer's a multi-Oscar winner, so he's out there playing a second time. So your time's only going to be around the corner. I feel it.
Time will tell. Time will tell, my friend.
We'll see how that plays out. Thanks to people who did send in the questions. I'm just seeing another one here. Ori sent in a question that actually was very similar to Willie's, so we won't ask that one again. But yes, people listening, send them in. We have plenty of recappers coming on throughout the remainder of the season as well. And of course, Brian, no doubt, will come on the show plenty of times. So if you've got more questions for Brian, you can check that out. Now, we do wrap up, though, these recaps with a couple of questions just to close it out. And I will say, given that you are the first recapper for the season, you've got the tough task of answering these first, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But I feel you're up for the task here, Brian, if you're ready to face the music with these 4 questions. Always. That's what I like to hear. You sort of given me a kind of a rough answer with this one, but I want to get it down on official paper. Brian Heidik, who is your tip to win Survivor Cambodia? Joe. Locked in and done. On that question, who is your dark horse to win? Who's somebody who you think might sneak through and take a surprise victory if Joe doesn't take it?
Keith.
Oh, yes. I just want to point it out there. If Keith Nail is a Survivor winner and joins your very exclusive club, Brian, please invite me to the first dinner you guys have together in the Survivor Winners Club, because I will be there in spades.
Absolutely.
I'll bring along a beer. Who's next to be voted out? Who's going home next week?
I'd have to say Abby.
Abby. Alrighty, see you, Abby. And the final question here for you, Brian. Now, out of all these players, we've only seen one episode, but this is maybe the easiest way to answer this one because you've seen them all in one episode together. Which of all the players out there do you feel is most similar to you, or how at least you played when you played on Thailand?
Well, on this particular show, it'd be tough. I'd have to say, there's nobody in particular I can point out offhand. That's a tough one.
You can say nobody and just say that your game was so unique that nobody can compare. That's a fair enough answer.
Keep it at that.
Yep, keep it at that. Good. I like it.
Thank you.
written down in ink, and it's going up on the website as 100% confirmed. Brian, you've done well, mate, and it's always a pleasure having you on the show. And look, we look forward to not only getting you back on the show, but I'm hoping that next year, Reality Rally, as I said to you, if you're there, I'm there. We can do this in person, and we can shake hands and have a beer together. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Looking forward to meeting you in person, and tell everyone hello over there in Australia. Look forward to coming back on the show here sometime soon.
And there we have it, Brian Heidik, winner of Survivor Thailand. You know, I always get a little bit excited when Brian comes on the show, and it's always super fun to get him on for whatever we are talking about. And of course, we are talking about Survivor Cambodia. We're here. It's finally arrived, season 31, and we've got a full season ahead of covering it. Weekly recaps. Oz Topsies, they're back. If you're listening to this beforehand, well, tune in live, and if not, well, you can listen to it already online. Of course, SurvivorOz.com is our website. Follow us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, or the other way around. Usually that's how it works. YouTube as well, and we always appreciate your feedback, comments. Subscribe to us on iTunes, and remember, you can rate us and comment on there as well. Next week on the show, our recapper as of right now is the one, the only, Mr. Dan Foley from Survivor Worlds Apart. Now, our interview with Dan, of course, went for 4 hours. So we'll maybe keep the recap just a little bit shorter than 4 hours, but Dan's always going to have a lot to say, so we look forward to bringing him back on to talk about his Worlds Apart contestants in Joe and Shirin and everything else to do with the season. But until then, thank you for tuning in to our episode 1 recap with Brian Heidik. My name is Ben, the Tribe has spoken, and we will speak to you next time on the trains.